Christmas morning started like a dream. I remember adjusting Lily's little red velvet dress while Marcus loaded the car with presents. Our 18-month-old daughter babbled happily in her car seat, completely unaware that in just a few hours everything would change. We were heading to my family's annual Christmas dinner, and I felt that familiar flutter of excitement mixed with something I could not quite name. My sister Diane always had strong opinions about everything, but this was Christmas. What could possibly go wrong? Before I share what happened that night, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Please hit that like button and subscribe, because this story gets intense, and you will not want to miss how my husband handled what came next. Growing up as the youngest in a family of 5 children shaped my entire worldview. Diane, my oldest sister at 35, had always positioned herself as the family matriarch since our parents started slowing down. She never married, never had children, but somehow felt qualified to judge everyone else's parenting choices. The dynamic between us had always been complicated, but it got worse after I married Marcus 3 years ago. Diane never liked my husband from the moment I introduced him. She made snide comments about military marriages never lasting, about how deployment schedules would ruin our relationship, about how I was too young to tie myself down to someone who might not come home. When Marcus returned from his 8-month deployment last spring, and we immediately started trying for a baby, Diane's disapproval became even more obvious. Now, here we were, pulling into my parents' driveway on Christmas Eve, and I could already see Diane's car parked in the prime spot near the front door. She had arrived early ostensibly to help with preparations, but I knew better. Diane liked to establish dominance by being the first one there, setting up the dynamics before anyone else arrived. The moment we walked through the door, I felt it. That subtle shift in energy that happened whenever Diane decided someone needed correcting. She barely glanced at Marcus, offered me a stiff hug, and immediately focused on Lily with a critical eye. "That baby cries too much," she announced within the first 10 minutes, even though Lily had been perfectly content. "You are spoiling her. In my day, children learned to self-soothe." I bit my tongue and focused on getting our coats hung up. Marcus squeezed my shoulder gently, a silent reminder that he was there, that we were a team. He had learned to navigate my family's dynamics with military precision, staying calm and protective, without escalating situations. As the evening progressed and more family members arrived, our modest family home filled with the chaos of 20 people spanning 3 generations. My parents, my 4 siblings with their various partners, cousins, aunts, and uncles, all crowded into the living spaces that suddenly felt much smaller than usual. Lily, overwhelmed by the noise and unfamiliar faces, began to get cranky. I tried to keep her calm, but every little whimper seemed to set Diane's teeth on edge. When Lily accidentally dropped her favorite stuffed elephant and started to fuss, Diane's voice cut through the family chatter like a knife. "Control your child, Corinne. This is supposed to be a peaceful family gathering." The room went quiet for just a moment before conversations awkwardly resumed. I felt my cheeks burn as I picked up the toy and soothed Lily, but I could see other family members exchanging glances. Nobody said anything to defend me or challenge Diane's comment. They never did. Christmas dinner began with all the traditional fanfare. Mom had outdone herself with the turkey ham and enough side dishes to feed an army. The dining room table extended with every leaf, and surrounded by mismatched chairs borrowed from around the house barely contained our feast. I settled Lily in her portable high chair next to my seat, giving her some soft finger foods to keep her occupied while the adults ate. She was actually being remarkably well behaved for an 18-month-old in such a stimulating environment, but I could feel Diane's eyes on us constantly. The conversation flowed around the table, covering the usual family updates about careers, relationships, and holiday plans. Diane dominated much of the discussion, interrupting others and steering topics back to her own opinions and experiences. I noticed Marcus's jaw tightening slightly each time she cut someone off, but he maintained his composure. As dinner progressed, Lily began showing signs of tiredness. She rubbed her eyes with little fists and started to get fussy despite my efforts to keep her entertained. I tried bouncing her gently on my lap while singing softly and offering different foods, but nothing seemed to settle her completely. "Some people cannot control their children in public," Diane announced to the table, not looking directly at me but making sure everyone heard. The comment hung in the air like smoke. I felt my face flush hot with embarrassment and anger, but I forced myself to stay focused on Lily instead of responding. Around the table, family members suddenly became very interested in their plates, avoiding eye contact. My dad cleared his throat and tried to change the subject to football scores, while my mom laughed nervously and offered more wine to anyone within reach. Marcus reached over and squeezed my hand under the table, his calloused fingers interlocking with mine in a gesture of solidarity. I could feel the tension in his grip, the controlled strength that came from years of military training. He was letting me handle the situation while silently communicating that he had my back. The situation deteriorated when Lily, reaching for her sippy cup, accidentally knocked it over. The lid was secure, so only a small amount of water spilled, but the plastic cup clattered against her high chair tray, before falling to the floor with a loud thunk. I immediately jumped up to clean the mess, apologizing as I grabbed napkins from the sideboard. "I am so sorry, everyone. She is just tired and overstimulated." "This is exactly why I do not have children at my dinner parties," Diane said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "There is a time and place for everything, and family dinner requires a certain level of decorum." My brother David shifted uncomfortably in his seat, while his wife whispered something in his ear. My other siblings focused intensely on their food, and I realized with growing hurt that nobody was going to speak up for me. The enablement pattern that had allowed Diane's behavior for decades was playing out in real time with me and my baby daughter as the casualties. The tension in the room became so thick it felt suffocating. Every small sound Lily made seemed amplified, every movement scrutinized. I found myself questioning whether I should just pack up and leave, spare everyone the disruption of a tired toddler. But this was Christmas dinner with my family. Why should I have to leave? Marcus sat perfectly still beside me, but I could sense the change in his energy. His military training had taught him to observe and assess situations before acting, and I knew he was taking mental notes of everything happening around our table. His presence felt like a coiled spring, ready to act if needed, but waiting for the right moment. As we moved to the living room for dessert and coffee, I hoped the change of scenery might help settle Lily down. I carried her toward a quiet corner near the Christmas tree, thinking the twinkling lights might distract her from her overtired state. But my 18-month-old had reached her limit, and despite my best efforts at gentle rocking and soft humming, she began to melt down in earnest. Her cries were not unusual for a toddler who had missed her nap and been surrounded by overwhelming stimulation for hours, but in the context of Diane's escalating irritation, they felt deafening. I bounced Lily gently, tried offering her favorite pacifier, and whispered soothing words, but nothing seemed to help. That was when Diane approached me, her coffee cup in hand, and her face set in stern disapproval. The rest of the family was scattered around the living room, some watching football, others engaged in quiet conversations, but I could feel their attention shifting toward us. "Corinne, this is ridiculous," Diane said, her voice cutting through Lily's cries. "That baby is ruining everyone's Christmas." I looked up from my daughter's tear-streaked face, feeling defensive but trying to keep my voice calm. "She is just tired, Diane. I was about to take her upstairs for a quick nap." Diane stepped directly into my path toward the stairs, blocking my exit. "No, you need to discipline her properly. This behavior is completely unacceptable." "She is 18 months old," I replied, my patience starting to fray. "She does not understand discipline the way you are thinking about it. She is overwhelmed and needs to rest." This is exactly what is wrong with your generation." Diane's voice began to rise, and I noticed conversations around the room growing quieter as people tuned in to our exchange. "You baby these children instead of teaching them respect and boundaries." Lily's crying intensified, as if she could sense the tension building around her. I held her closer, feeling her little body trembling with exhaustion and distress. "She is literally a baby Diane. She needs comfort, not punishment." The room had gone completely silent now except for Lily's cries. I could see my parents on the couch, my dad half standing as if he might intervene, my mom wringing her hands but saying nothing. My siblings watched from various corners of the room like spectators at a tennis match, waiting to see who would win this particular volley. "Someone needs to teach that child proper behavior," Diane declared, reaching toward Lily with determination in her eyes. "Let me show you how it is done." I instinctively stepped back, clutching my daughter protectively. "Do not touch her." "Someone needs to," Diane replied, her face flushed red with anger and frustration. And then it happened. Diane's hand swung out and connected with Lily's cheek in a sharp slap that echoed through the suddenly silent room. The sound seemed to freeze time itself. Lily's crying stopped for just a split second before erupting into a scream of pain and terror that pierced straight through my heart. I stared at my sister in complete shock, unable to process what had just occurred. Did you just hit my baby?" The words came out of my mouth in a whisper of disbelief. "I barely touched her," Diane replied defensively, but her voice wavered slightly. "You are overreacting. That was not hitting, that was discipline. That was a lesson she needed to learn." Around the room, 20 pairs of eyes stared at us in stunned silence. My mother gasped audibly, her hand flying to cover her mouth. My father stood up from the couch but made no move to intervene. My brothers and sisters, their spouses, my aunts and uncles, all frozen in place like mannequins. Nobody moved to help me. Nobody spoke up to condemn what had just happened. They all just sat there watching, as if waiting to see how this family drama would play out. I stood there shaking, holding my screaming daughter, feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my life. "You hit my baby." I repeated louder this time, as if saying it again might make someone in my family react appropriately to what they had just witnessed. That was when I heard the sound of Marcus's chair scraping against the hardwood floor. He stood up slowly, deliberately, his 6'2" frame unfolding with the controlled precision of someone who had been trained to handle crisis situations. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees as he moved across the living room toward where Diane and I stood near the Christmas tree. Every eye in the room shifted to my husband, and I saw something in his expression that I had never seen before. This was not just Marcus, my loving partner and father to our child. This was Commander Marcus Thompson, United States Army, and someone had just crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Marcus positioned himself between Diane and our family, with the kind of controlled authority that came from years of leading soldiers in high-pressure situations. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm, each word precisely enunciated. "You need to leave. Now." Diane sputtered clearly, taken aback by his directness. "Excuse me. This is my family home, and I will not be told what to do by—" "You just assaulted a baby." Marcus interrupted, his tone never rising but somehow filling the entire room with unmistakable authority. "My daughter, you have 30 seconds to collect your things and get out. I do not care whose house this is." He continued, his military bearing making him seem even taller than usual. "You will not be in the same room as my child for one more minute. Get out." Diane's face cycled through several expressions as she processed this ultimatum. She looked around the room, desperately seeking support from family members who had enabled her behavior for decades. "Mom, Dad, are you hearing this? Are you going to let him talk to me this way?" My parents sat frozen on their couch, my mother still clutching her hand to her mouth. my father staring at the floor. The silence stretched uncomfortably until my dad finally cleared his throat. "Diane, maybe you should—" He started but could not seem to finish the sentence. 20 seconds, Marcus announced calmly. Diane turned to my brothers and their wives, then to my other sister, her eyes pleading for someone to challenge Marcus's authority to restore the family dynamic that had always protected her from consequences. But for the first time in my memory, nobody came to Diane's rescue. I think that moment was when they all finally saw her behavior clearly, without the filter of family loyalty and decades of enabling. Watching her hit a baby had stripped away all the excuses and rationalizations that had allowed her to dominate family gatherings for years. "This is ridiculous," Diane said, but her voice had lost its commanding edge. "Fine, I will leave, but this is not over." 10 seconds, Marcus replied evenly. Diane grabbed her purse from the side table with shaking hands, her face now pale instead of flushed. She looked at me one last time, perhaps expecting me to intervene to choose family peace over protecting my daughter. But holding Lily, feeling her little body still trembling from the shock and pain of being hit, I found my own voice. "You will never touch my child again," I said, surprised by the strength in my words. "You will never be alone with her, never babysit, never have unsupervised access to my daughter. Never." Marcus escorted Diane to the front door while the rest of the family watched in stunned silence. I heard the door close firmly behind her, followed by the sound of her car starting in the driveway. Only then did the spell seem to break. My mother was the first to approach me, tears streaming down her face. "Honey, I am so sorry. I should have stopped her. I should have said something." "That was completely unacceptable," my father added, finally finding his voice. "I cannot believe she did that." One by one, my family members approached to apologize, to express their shock and regret for not intervening sooner. My brother David looked particularly ashamed as he said, "I cannot believe I just sat there. I am so sorry, Corinne." But the immediate priority was Lily. I took her upstairs to my childhood bedroom to examine her cheek in better light and privacy. The red mark from Diane's hand was clearly visible against her pale skin, but thankfully there did not appear to be any serious injury. Marcus joined us, his military composure finally softening as he gently stroked our daughter's hair. "I am proud of how you handled that," he said quietly, pulling both of us into his arms. "You protected her perfectly." We decided to pack up and go home rather than staying for the rest of the evening. As I gathered Lily's diaper bag with still shaking hands, family members continued to approach us individually, apologizing and expressing support. The mood in the house had shifted completely, as if Diane's removal had lifted a dark cloud that had been hovering over our family dynamics for years. The quiet car ride home gave me time to process what had happened. Lily fell asleep in her car seat within minutes, emotionally exhausted from the evening's trauma. Marcus held my hand as he drove, occasionally squeezing gently to remind me that we were in this together. Over the next few days, we focused on helping Lily recover from the incident. I called our pediatrician to have her cheek examined more for my own peace of mind than out of medical necessity. We scheduled a therapy session to work through my own feelings about the family trauma and betrayal. But the most important work was setting firm boundaries with my extended family. Marcus and I had long conversations about what kind of relationship we wanted to maintain with people who had sat silently while someone hurt our child. We realized that family loyalty was not supposed to be a one-way street, and that protecting Lily meant being willing to lose people who could not respect basic boundaries. The response from my family surprised me in many ways. My parents called daily to check on Lily and repeatedly apologized for their inaction. My brother David drove over to our house to apologize in person and ask how he could do better. Even my more distant relatives reached out to express their support, and condemn Diane's behavior. We learned who our true allies were in the family, and surprisingly, most of them stepped up once they were freed from Diane's dominance. Christmas dinner the following year was actually peaceful and enjoyable for the first time in my adult memory. Diane was not invited, and nobody questioned that decision. As for Diane herself, she sent a few angry text messages in the weeks following Christmas, but she never apologized or acknowledged that hitting Lily was wrong. Eventually, the messages stopped, and we heard through family channels that she had decided to distance herself from all of us. 3 years later, she has never returned to a family gathering, never met Lily's younger brother who was born last year, and never attempted to repair the relationships she destroyed that Christmas night. Sometimes I wonder if I should feel sad about losing my sister, but mostly I feel relief. Lily has no memory of being hit, but she has grown up in a family environment where adults protect children instead of enabling abusive behavior. She is thriving as a confident, happy 4-year-old who knows she is loved and safe. My marriage with Marcus grew stronger through facing that crisis together. His military training gave him tools for handling the immediate situation, but it took both of us working together to establish and maintain the boundaries that protect our family. I learned that I have strength I did not know I possessed, and that motherhood had fundamentally changed my priorities in ways I never expected. Looking back, I realized that Christmas dinner taught me the difference between relatives and family. Relatives are connected by blood or marriage, but family are the people who stand up for you when it matters most. Sometimes protecting the people you love means being willing to lose the people you thought mattered. That Christmas night showed me that silence in the face of wrongdoing is a form of complicity, but it also showed me that people can change when they are finally confronted with the consequences of their choices. Most of my family members became better versions of themselves once they were freed from the toxic dynamic that had defined our gatherings for so long. I no longer fear confrontation when my children's safety is at stake. I learned that being polite or keeping peace is never more important than protecting innocent people from harm. And perhaps most importantly, I discovered that sometimes the best gift someone can give your family is removing themselves from it permanently. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members to protect your children? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please give this video a thumbs up if you think Marcus handled the situation correctly, and hit that subscribe button for more real-life stories about family drama and finding your strength. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that protecting their children is always the right choice, even when it costs relationships you thought mattered. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope your own family gatherings are filled with the kind of love and respect that everyone deserves.